In this video, I'm going to teach you 5 drawing skills you need to know to draw your first manga. I watched Bakuman in 2016 as a anime watching, hentai gooning teenager and thought, man, I think I want to become a manga artist. And so I tried and failed over and over again due to a lack of foundational drawing knowledge. And so I fell into the study trap. I thought I needed to study things like anatomy, color theory, draw 10,000 faces, 20,000 hands, and God knows how many fucking boxes, man. But even at the end of all that, I still couldn't really draw manga. And that's because the best way to get good at drawing manga is by drawing manga.
Oh my God.
Am I right? See, true learning is done in the arena, on the job. If you're spending a lot of time studying abstract concepts and even practicing stuff like anatomy and perspective, which is objective, if you don't know how it applies to your goal, making an amazing manga that can inspire a generation and finally have your mother acknowledge your art, you're going to be wasting a lot of time learning skills you actually don't need instead of telling the story, which is the main thing when it comes to making manga. My name is Shirshak Shakir, aka Swordok, and currently my goal is to document my journey of becoming a creator in the webcomic/manga space. And in this video, I'm going to teach you the bare minimum drawing skills I wish I had as a kid so I could have just made the damn manga. The first thing you need to learn is rotating forms in perspective. Right, so the first thing from that we need to consider is, now what is even perspective? So when we think about perspective, what I want you to think about is you as the viewer looking from your perspective onto the scene, looking at the subject, right? So the perspective of the viewer or the perspective of the camera through which you're viewing the subject at hand, okay? For example, right now, you are looking at me from that camera over there, and that's your perspective coming at me, right? And so you're gonna see a flat perspective because it's on eye level, it's at my eye level, so the perspective here in this scene is pretty flat. Depending on where you view me from, if you view me from up there, for example, right? So let's say you are up here, right? And you're viewing me, right? This is the camera. And you're viewing me standing here like this, right? You're not gonna see this perspective, okay? You're gonna see something, right? Let's turn this guy into a blob, right? You're not gonna see something like this, right? That's flat. You're gonna see something like this, right? So depending on where you're looking at the viewer from, depending on what the perspective is, what the shape looks like, what the form looks like changes. And so let's learn some basic perspective theory. You want to get right into it. We don't want to waste any time. So when we're talking about making manga, there's 3 types of perspectives that we're really concerned with. 1 point. The second one is 2 points. And the third one, 3-point perspective. So let's break down 1-point perspective. So right here, this is our scene, right? Cool. Now we're gonna draw the horizon line. And what is the horizon line? Let's define the fucking horizon line, guys. The horizon line is the eye level of the viewer/camera. Okay? Essentially, if you are looking at a subject from below, as in you're looking up at them, because you're below, the horizon line is gonna be down here. Okay? If you're looking down at the subject, so you're above the subject, the horizon line is going to be up there, okay? If you're looking at them from a neutral point, from a neutral position, your horizon line is going to be somewhere around there. So for 1-point perspective, I'm going to just use a neutral point and I'm going to place 1 point right in the middle of the canvas. And think of this box just as the frame, okay? And the perspective the points can be anywhere along this horizon line, but because it's 1-point perspective we're talking about, we're gonna have the point just here. And from there, you have lines converging out, right, to the vanishing point, right? Just like that. Just like that. Right? And so what you can do with this essentially is now you can place perpendicular lines coming down from the ground plane, which is the ground right here, right? That being the ground plane. And essentially, you can go back in perspective like that, and it's only converging at one point. Cool? Everything else is parallel. Everything else is parallel, right? And then from here, it will come out like this, right? We can shade it in. That is 1 point perspective. Every line that is not going left or right, or up and down, but rather is going back away from us, is going to converge into this one vanishing point right here. Let's call it VP1, vanishing point 1. For example, let's say we want a box above the eye level, right? We're looking up at them. We'll just place the box above the horizon line, okay? So come here. Right here we can draw a horizontal line going from left to right, draw vertical lines, and draw the box. Now that's just a flat box. How we add dimension to it is we move it back in perspective, going back into the vanishing point. Just like that. And then from here, right? And this, go like that. Connect this, connect that. We have a bunch of boxes floating in perspective. Bro, that is that easy shit, bro. You should already know this, man. You should already know this. Now let's move on to 2-point perspective right here, right? 2-point perspective, guys. We'll have a neutral vanishing point. So we'll draw our straight lines. Something you need to know how to draw is draw straight lines. I like drawing straight lines because I practice them so much. So you can tell like I practice this shit, right? The reason I don't really care about your dexterity and drawing clean lines is because a lot of manga artists have like shitty line quality anyway. Like Gege Akutami's lines are like so scratchy. Isayama's lines are so scratchy. And yet they're selling millions and millions of copies and they're the most popular manga artists around. Because realistically, it's not about the draftsmanship or the art quality. It's about the story. And so in this video, what I want to do is I want to showcase to you the bare minimum you need in order to create your stories, right? Not to become like the best artist in the world, because I'm not the best artist in the world, so I can't teach you how to become the best artist in the world. But I can give you the shortcut to just create your first manga and get out there so you can build upon that skill and you yourself decide what type of artist you want to become, right? I can't tell you should be like Kim Jong-gi or you should be like Takeshi Obata, or you can just be like Isayama, whatever you prefer. Personally, right now, I'm in a phase where it's like, okay, enough studying, enough like jerking myself off, right? Like in a circle jerk, trying to like get better at art, and instead just creating the product so I can become the mangaka I want to become. Anyway, like that's besides the point. Alright, so 2-point perspective. So horizon line, the eye level is going to be neutral again, right? Straight across. And then we're going to add 2 points, but these 2 points here, they're not going to be on the page. They can be on the page, but I recommend it just for your sanity. Like you put these 2 points around the end, okay, outside of the, what do you call this? The picture plane. So this is called the picture plane. Just think of it as the camera frame through which you're seeing the image, but there's still things that exist outside of this frame, right? This picture plane. Just think of it as the camera frame, okay? Right, there's still things that exist outside of the frame, but the viewer is only going to see what's within the frame, right? So the vanishing points can exist out of the frame, and most of the times they are outside of the frame, okay? Except for in 1-point perspective. And so, like how we had lines converging into 1 point with 1-point perspective, we're going to have lines converging into 2 different points in 2-point perspective, okay? So we'll call this the left vanishing point, right? And then we'll call this the right vanishing point, okay? So I'll just put an X right here so we know exactly where it is and it's not arbitrary, okay? And we'll just have like a bunch of lines coming out, straight lines coming out from that point, right? Same here. Yeah, you notice how I'm not using a ruler for this shit? Like, that's why I'm a fucking goat, bro. I don't need any rulers. But if you need a ruler, use rulers. Manga artists use rulers all the time. I just have an ego. But anyway, with this now, we have two vanishing points. So anything converging back into the right side and the left side, we can use the vanishing points for, right? Up and down, right? Vertically, up and down, that's still parallel. So everything here is parallel, right? Still parallel. But now, left and right, they're converging into the two vanishing points, right? So left vanishing point, this side is going into the vanishing point. So it's gonna kind of go like that, right? Into that point. Come down like this, and then from here, right, we can have a line coming like that, right? And then we'll have another vanishing point there. And look, perfectly, I'd already drawn one line that connects right into that corner there. So I can just fill that in. And we have that perfect perspective, right? That's 2-point perspective. It's so simple. In fact, we can even draw a house right here. But what I also want you to do is not just draw the outlines and the outside of it, but draw through. Because that's a very fundamental skill, not only in manga art, but also in animation. So you have to draw through. So what would the sides within this box look like, right? So this is how it would look like. I'd go from here, and this would converge into the left vanishing point. Right here. Come like this. And then from here, from the right vanishing point, we can bring it out. Holy shit, have I fucked it up? We'll do something like that, fuck it. Right, we'll come down right around here, from here. Come down, and then we'll do something like that. But you get the point, right? This would go into the right vanishing point. This would come out, and the same thing would happen there. It's just that it looks really long here, so I'm gonna fill it in. And that's 2-point perspective, nice and simple, man. We'll just do a small box right here, right? Start with one line in the middle. We'll have it converge here, here, and then have these converge back here, right? Now we can draw 2 lines right there. This will go back like this. This will come like this. We'll do something like this. I'm going to shade in the bone plane. And we have 2 boxes in perspective. Nice and simple, nice and easy. Now 3-point perspective is actually the real perspective because we're always seeing things in 3-point perspective, really. Okay? This is the most versatile perspective. Now there's fisheye and everything. Fisheye is like 4-point, 5-point perspective. We don't need to get into that, guys. That's a bit complex. You can look that up. It's not really that hard once you understand how to draw things in 3-point perspective. 4-point, 5-point perspective is the same thing. There's curvilinear perspective as well, which is 5-point. That one's kind of difficult. But at the end of the day, I think once you understand these 3, as you gain mileage, as you do more and more, like it becomes pretty easy to understand 5-point, 4-point perspective as well. But let's draw our picture plane. This time we're gonna do it really big. Okay, we're gonna draw big shit. Holy shit, look at that big ass line, bro. Cool, and then let's draw our horizon line. And remember, with 3-point perspective, we can kind of play around with where we're looking at the subject from in terms of height. So for example, let's say with this perspective, we're looking down at a subject, okay? So let's have, if we're looking down on the subject, where are we gonna be as a viewer from above them, right? So up, so the horizon line, which is the eye line, is gonna be high, up, right? Right here. So let's place it above the midpoint around here because we're looking at it. Now notice how, because the line is like big, my shit just like messed up now. So this is where I would probably maybe use a ruler, I don't know. But you know, my ego tells me I can manage with that one. So this is the line. This is the line. Okay. So we have 2 points here, and this time we're gonna add another point down here. Okay. If the horizon line was down here and we were looking up at the subject, we would include the third vanishing point here, right? Or like around here, away from the page, not within the page either. But because we are looking down at it, we'll include it down here. And this time we'll have lines also converging out from this point, okay? And we'll have lines converging out like this as well. And you can already see the perspective, right? You can already see the 3D space here, guys. Okay, let's draw a box. We can already see plane right here. I can already see this plane, okay? So because I can see it, I'm gonna outline it. Now with this plane, the up and down, right? So the vertical lines are also converging into the third vanishing point. And then the left to right lines, right to left lines are converging into the left vanishing point, okay? So let me label this. And so now, right, we want to go back in perspective. We're just going to use this vanishing point and then bring it out, okay? Like that, and then we're going to use this. I don't like that. Let's say the point is here. Fucking hell, this is hard. See, if I wasn't doing this whole grid thing, I would be able to do it. But because I'm using grids, and I'm not used to using grids, I'm messing it up. That seems fine. So I'm going to go ahead and outline it. Right, and then I'm not gonna bother with the vanishing points now, because I kind of have a rough idea of where they're going anyway, right? Kind of converging like this. And so we have a box in perspective, just like that. I see one right here. All right, let's make this one short. Now I'm not gonna even bother with I'm still referencing the vanishing points, right? I'm still referencing them. I'm just not directly drawing them in the picture, because I don't need to. Okay, I don't need to. So with this, we understand 3-point perspective as well. Eventually, the point you want to get to is you want to abandon these vanishing points and perspective lines and just be able to understand these intuitively, where you can understand that, okay, so there's a vanishing point going towards the right, okay? I'm looking up at the subject, so I'll see the bottom plane, okay? There's probably a vanishing point around here somewhere, right? Around here somewhere. There, so this is probably converging there like that, and this is going in. It doesn't have to be accurate or perfect. It just needs to look right. There's probably a vanishing point somewhere around here. So this is going to converge there, this is going to converge there, this is going to converge like this, right? And then these are also going to converge into that top vanishing point, right? And these are all they're not converging, so I made a mistake. So these need to converge as well, right? Into the right vanishing point, just like that, right? And with that, I have an intuitive understanding of perspective, but everything is based on this, okay? So what I want you to do is, I want you to study these, right? Study 1.2, 3-point perspective. Perhaps go and watch modern day James's videos on it. I'm just teaching you how to do it for manga with my personality. But modern day James's videos, I think they go into a bit more depth, not that much more depth. I think I covered it pretty well as well. with boxes, you want to be able to rotate. For example, if this box rotates down, right, I'll see less of this plane now, right? And honestly, like, I'm not even like really thinking about everything. I just have an intuitive understanding of it. So, and I'll mess around with it. I'm not trying to be Kim Jong-gi here, right? I'll just mess around with it until it looks right. And then because I'll be using a pencil, I'll get more right in the ink. Guys, what I also want to mention is, like, within the horizon line, right, within the eye line, although we discussed 1.2 point, 3.4 point, 5 point perspective, there's actually infinite amount of points along the horizon. So although I put a vanishing point here and here, right, there's actually a vanishing point here as well, and here, and here. And the way you rotate these boxes within perspective is, instead of having them converge here, if you want to rotate it slightly to the left, you just move this vanishing point slightly to the left, right? And eventually you come in the middle. So for example, if the box was rotated slightly to the left and it used this vanishing point instead, it would look something more like this, right? And then this vanishing point would move to the left, but then this vanishing point would also move to the left. So how would we rotate this, right? How we would rotate this is, along the horizon line, we would move the right vanishing point to the left, and then we'll move the left vanishing point to the left as well. If you want us to rotate this box like this, we're going to use these vanishing points as I mentioned. So, right, it's going to be here. We're moving it from there. We're going to move it slightly to the left. In fact, let's move it here. Right, let's move it here, all the way from here to here, right? That's the right vanishing point. And the left vanishing point, we move it the same distance, so roughly around here, right? So the left vanishing point, sorry, and that would come here. Okay, so right here. Now you can see how these are the same boxes, but this one is slightly rotated like this, right, towards the left, where this one is slightly more rotated to the right. That's what you're thinking about when you're trying to rotate cubes or boxes in perspective. Now, what are the shapes you need to be able to rotate in perspective, okay? What the fuck is form, man? Essentially what forms are, they're just like basic 3D shapes, okay? So the first one we have is the sphere, okay? I'm going to shade it so you know it's 3D. Sphere. The second one is easy. We just used it. And the third one is the hardest one in my opinion. The cylinder. Now you can add the cone in it as well, but once you understand the cylinder, you will understand the cone. So it's not really like that deep. And why are these important, okay? The reason they're important is because everything we see in the world is created out of these three forms, or a variation of these three forms, okay? The more complicated you get, you know, the big, medium, small, so the big is the simple things. Like when you simplify them into the big shapes, they're always spheres, cubes, or cylinders. And once you go more complex, you go into the mediums and then the smalls, things get complicated. But because the best way to learn is to simplify things, we need to understand these forms first, okay? For example, the human body. What is the human body, okay? The head is like the torso, your box, right? The pelvis is like a triangular shape underwear thing, or you can just simplify it into a box as well. The shoulders or the deltoids can be like circles as well, spheres as well, right? The limbs are all cylinders, right? The hands, boxes and cylinders, right? Legs are also knees, circles. But that's what the human body really is, right? The head is way too big, but you get the idea, right? So we need to understand these forms so we can rotate figures and heads in perspective as well. So we already discussed how to draw the cube. It's pretty simple once you understand perspective, drawing straight stuff. Fun thing about spheres is that you actually don't need to learn how to draw them in perspective, because no matter how you look at them, they're always going to be round and circular. Now, with like more shapes that are more elliptical, right, and round, those are a bit more complex. But essentially, I think the most important thing you need to learn is rotating this one right here, which is the cylinder. Now, how do you rotate the cylinder? You need to understand ellipses. Now, what are ellipses? Ellipses are basically circles. I'm sorry, that's a terrible circle, but what can you do, bro? 5 years drawing, 6 years drawing, and I still can't draw a circle. Now, when you rotate that, right, in perspective, what you get is an ellipse. The circle will look like that. Check this out. Circle, ellipse, right? Ellipse, circle, ellipse. See, that's the point I'm getting. The other thing you need to know about how to draw ellipses properly is minor axis, all right? The minor axis is a line that runs directly perpendicular to the ellipse, okay? And the reason we need to know about this line that, essentially is a line that comes straight out like this, so wherever the ellipse moves, right, it comes directly perpendicular at a right angle from the plane, okay? So let's say this is an ellipse, right? This is the center of the ellipse. The minor axis is a line that is directly perpendicular to the ellipse's plane. Essentially, it will cut the ellipse straight in half because it runs perpendicular straight in the middle of the ellipse, right? And essentially, the ellipse will be drawn like this, right? In the direction, facing the direction of the minor axis, right? And through that, we can draw a cone, right? Or we can draw a cylinder as well. And this minor axis would run down here, and so the ellipse will also be reflected here like this on the cylinder. Now this is really hard for me to explain because I'm dumb. The minor axis, right? So let's say I'm trying to draw a cylinder that's facing me, okay? That's looking directly at me, but it's slightly facing down as well. I'm going to draw the minor axis, right? And because it's facing me, right, it's going to be circular, but because it's facing slightly away from me, the size of the ellipse will be thin, okay? Like this. We'll go back in perspective. Like that, right? That's minor axis. And it would actually be longer than that, but... And then as it comes closer to me, it would get more and more circular. The degree of the ellipse would get more and more circular, right? Eventually, it would just be a circle, and then I wouldn't see its length, and it would be somewhere here like this, okay? So as the ellipse or the cylinder, right, faces more and more away from us, the degree gets smaller and smaller, okay? And by degree, I just mean the size of the ellipse, right? It gets less and less circular. But as it faces more towards us, it gets more circular. And so this concept applies to literally any direction, okay? For example, let's say it's facing more towards us here. That's why it's circular. But then let's say here, it's like nearly facing away from us. So we see more of its length and less of its ellipse, whatever face. And here's a tip about drawing an ellipse. Let's say this is the minor axis. Try to angle your hands in the direction of the minor axis and then hover, right, the ellipse at the direction, and then you tend to get it right, okay? And then we can connect these. Yeah, got it wrong there. But who cares, right? It don't have to be perfect. You can practice this, like hundreds and millions of times, bro. I personally think if you're trying to be a manga artist, like there's better ways to spend your time than drawing a bunch of fucking ellipses and cylinders. But at the same time, these are such foundational concepts that had I not learned them, like I'd have a really difficult time drawing literally anything. So I highly do recommend you study these, practice these, do like hundreds of these, if not thousands. But if you get bored of them, like you don't always have to do them. Like I think I got most of my mileage by just doing these as warm-ups, right? The same concept applies to cones as well, right? Minor axis, hover, draw it, not perfect, doesn't matter, right? And then the point should be, right, the top point should be where the minor axis is. For the assignment, I recommend you draw 250 boxes in perspective. Do the perspective lessons and then go to drawbox.com and then just like follow along. The rules are all there. And then I think a good challenge is the tire challenge, car wheel or the car tire challenge, where you draw different like tires from trucks and cars and stuff. That's really good as well. All right. So what's a good method to drawing the face? You've heard it before. You probably know it as the Loomis method. Okay. So how do we start? Circle, okay? Cut the edges of the circle away with ellipses, okay? Because the side plane of the head is flat, like this, okay? Bring down a boxy shape like this for the jaw, okay? Easy. Bring down the center line. See this circle right here that we drew originally? Cut that in half. See this circle? Cut that in half. What is that? That's the brow line. So let's label that, okay? Label that. Cool. From here, you go halfway again, all right? From here to here, halfway is here. What is that? What is that, guys? You already know what that is. That's the nose line. Nose line. That's where the nose sits, okay? Half of that. Half again. What's that? I don't need to tell you. You already know what that is, guys. That's the lip line or the mouth line. Okay. From the brow line, halfway, and slightly higher, or like halfway. No one cares. That's the hairline. Cool. Okay. Brow line to the nose line, right? And then half that again, that's where the eye line is. But you don't really need to know that because you kind of already have the things that we need. Now another thing you need to know is the brow line and the nose line at the side plane gives you the length of the ears, okay? That's where the ears sits. Okay, so I'm going to quickly add in the features. We're going to discuss about the features in a bit. But just to give you an idea if this works or not. It does. Why the hell would I be teaching you this if it didn't work? It works. Trust me, bro. I'll give you another tip, actually, right? From the ear line, right, down to the corner of the chin, bring down a curved line like this. And that allows you to separate the side plane. Of the face. Easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, my brother. I'm going to teach you the 3/4 method. Start off with a circle, right? Center line towards the right. Maybe that's a bit too much, but doesn't matter. Same concept. You know, the ellipse. Remember the ellipse. Remember the ellipse. To carve the side plane. Mine axis comes out like this. And now we can just draw an ellipse like this. See why we learn the methods, guys? We learn the methods so we can use it to draw the people. The people, the method is for the people, my brother. Now we bring down like a boxy shape like this for the jaw. Hey, look, we can just, whatever. Right, jaw. That jaw is like long as hell. Let's make it shorter. Right, this one probably goes back in perspective like this. Bring it in. Right, and one thing you need to learn is that you see each of these lines, right? They go back in perspective and they're always parallel to each other. So let's add the center line, the eye line, the brow line, halfway down the face, the sphere, right? The cranial mass of the head, halfway across. And then halfway again, parallel, going to the right vanishing point. Nose line, halfway again, mouth line, whatever. And because the ellipse is kind of off here, it will actually be flat like this. Okay. And don't worry, we're going to study the skull so you understand the cheekbone comes out like this a little bit, goes in, whatever, right? Eye line, a lot of people would like to draw the eye line. I think just eyeball it, bro. Comes out like this, right? We can draw the eyebrows. Actually, let's give this guy some sick ass eyebrows. And in fact, we don't even need to give him eyes. We can make him Asian. Ni hao. Is that racist? I'm Asian, right? That can't be racist. You know what? Chinese girls think I'm Chinese. They're like, "Are you Chinese?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Really?" Remember the ears, guys. Remember the ears, right? The ears are always where the brow line, right, and the nose line. So the nose line goes across and then back in perspective, okay? So the ear sits somewhere around here. And then we can give him the hair, whatever. Cool. You get side profile, same thing, even more simpler, so easy. Now it's a circle, jaw, right, brow line, comma attach, right, nose, middle, center, like halfway down, right, halfway down, like a ball. There's a ball here, okay? The mouth is a ball. I'll get into it in a bit when I draw the skull. Lips, again, halfway or slightly above, depending on your style, depending on the person you're drawing. Brow, socket sits here, another ball here for the eyes, right? Remember, nose line and the brow line gives us the length of the ear. Neck connects back right here. And that's like the basic Loomis method. Now, you need to understand some more things. Understanding just this is not enough. Okay? You need to do a bunch of these, but you also need to understand the skull. You can do a bunch of skull drawings, or you can just like reference the skull. Just look at image of a skull as you're drawing your faces and just try to understand what's happening. Okay, so I'm going to use the same method to draw the skull as well, because the Loomis method is based on the skull. Okay? And as you can see, I'm not using like the same steps. because it's intuitive now, okay? So the nasal bone, actually, there's a shape, a keystone shape, like this, right? And it goes down and back like this, okay? So this shape from the brow line goes down and back, and from here the nasal bone comes out like this, okay? And then the eye socket, what I want you to do is just draw some sunglasses shape, okay? Some big ass sunglasses shape, like this. Look at a reference of a skull, okay? You know the cheekbones of the zygomatic, it comes down. And then right here, right, for the mouth, we draw a ball, okay? We draw a sphere, right? The reason we draw a sphere is the cheekbones come like this, and they go around into the maxilla and the muzzle of the mouth, and it goes, wraps around like this, right? And then the cheekbones go over it, and it inserts back here like this, and then the zygomatic goes back. See, you don't need to know all of this, but having like a rough understanding of the skull helps you quite a bit. So do a bunch of skull studies. And then the jaw, or the mandible, is a shape like this. So whenever I'm drawing and I'm thinking about the face, how to draw the face, etc., I'm referencing the Loomis method based on my studies and experience of studying all this stuff, and I'm referencing the skull as well. Okay? And obviously it's not clear. You can see like I have a lot of scratchy lines here and there, and I could be cleaner, but I've been doing this video for like hours now, so. But yeah, so I'm thinking about this stuff. So do like some skull studies, or at least have a reference of a skull available if you're struggling with the face. How do I think about the features of the face? So first of all, let's do the eye. The eye is basically just a sphere, the eyeball, right? And then I just think of 3 lines for the top lid, like wrapping around like this. And then I think of a diagonal line going across and down like this. And then I'll then add in 2 lines, right, pointy lines like this, and connect the shape for the opening of the eye, right, like this. And then I'll add in the shape for the iris and the sclera and everything. Essentially that's, then I'll add in the bottom lid and the top lid. You don't really need like to know much more than this to make your first manga, but I'll give you some more details, right? Because I'm just like that. You see the eye socket that we drew right here? You always need to think about the eye socket as well, because the eyeball comes out like this, right? There's depth to the eyes, so the eyes actually sit back in the skull, and then it wraps around. So 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 lines down and up, right? And then you can add the pupil, which is the opening in the eye, and then you can add the iris, right? Like this. And then you can add the bottom lid, top plane of the bottom lid, like that. So you can see a little bit of the, if you look at your own eye in the mirror, right, you'll be able to see the top plane of the bottom lid. And then, you know, if your character is like white or black, or they have a upper eyelid exposure, you can add that in as well. If not, you can leave it if they're Asian or they have hunter eyes. See, the eye is pretty basic. For the nose, what I think about always is a pretty basic shape. Shape I think about is the keystone shape for the glabella, coming down like this, right? And then a shape like this, and then a triangular bottom plane like this, and then the side planes like this. So I think a lot, now you can look at the Sorrow head and you can break this down even further. You know, in anime and manga, the nose just goes like this. You know, they just have like two shapes like this. You know, they just simplify the nose like that. So you don't even need to know the nose that much. But I mean, if you want to study it, go ahead, study it. Because the thing is, yeah, the nose has like so many different shapes. Everyone has different types of noses. Like studying like one like basic way of drawing the nose in one form of drawing the nose and memorizing into your head, I think it's just a waste of time. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll do this, you know. I'll memorize this and then I'll do that. I'll do that, you know. I'll do that and then I'll do that. Whatever, right? I'll learn all that, but then some other dude's gonna have a completely different nose to that. And so I think it's really just understanding how to manipulate forms. And then once you understand that, applying it to like different scenarios and using reference and then trying to ingrain stuff into your visual library. You know what I mean? So learn this basic shape and then try to break it down even further by studying reference. And I think you'll be good with the mouth is pretty complicated as well, so I'm going to teach you some things about the mouth. Up until very recently, I never drew open mouths because I wasn't thinking about drawing, like, I literally, like, was just drawing from reference. The thing about mouth is, you need to learn to draw the lips first, and the lips is really easy. I just break it down into two, like, shapes like this, right? And then the upper lip has basically has like an upside down triangle in between. So you have the heart in the middle, and then you just have two other blobs here, and then the bottom two lips is just two blobs like this, right? So a heart, right? A blob, and then for the bottom lip, it's just two blobs like this. And that's essentially how you draw it. And you want to draw in perspective, you know, heart, 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 heart. But then I don't even add everything in because you just want to indicate. So instead of doing all this stupid shit, right, this is a good way to memorize it. A better way to learn it is to do something like this. Add the corners of the lips, the darkest areas, and then add the bottom lip. And then maybe the philtrum. The philtrum is like just like the gappy area that sits right here, you know? And that's enough to do the thing. So like just with indications, let's see what we can do, okay? So the eyes can be indicated with the 3 lines up here, 2 lines up here, and then a shape for the iris and the pupil, right? Indication for the glabella, indication for the nostrils, right? Indication. Eyebrows, right? Straight up. 3 lines, 2 lines. Philtrum, that dot for the corner, bottom lip. You see, just with that, I can indicate the face. You really want to play with indications, especially for manga and comic work, because you don't want to be like, you know, drawing like hyper detailed stuff. Kim Jong-gi does it like this, so if Kim Jong-gi does it like this, why not you? Now we want to learn how to draw the mouth open, and this is the really difficult part, but we want to learn to draw the teeth. So in order to draw the teeth, I just want to teach you 2 things, okay? The teeth are basically flat at the front, right? They're like this at the front, right? And then as they go to the back, right, they become thicker. They gain a thickness, okay? Like this. Like this. So think of teeth as gum shields, okay? Look at the shape of a gum shield. Don't think about teeth, think about gum shields, okay? That's the top teeth, right? We can maybe add some indentations to show that these are teeth, okay? Say this is tongue, right? And then again, the depth here, right? And then it gets narrow to the point where it's just flat. Then it gets thickness around the back again. Right, so gum shields. Thinking about teeth, we're thinking about gum shields. Okay, so practice drawing it like this from different angles. I don't know, it's like something like that, right? Ow, ow. Look at my nose, bruh. Look at my nose. Look at my. Give me food, bruv. Give me food, bruv. You know what I mean? That's how the teeth works. So just practice drawing this shape over and over again. In perspective. This is why drawing forms and understanding forms as is so important, because everything else is based on forms. Okay? Once you can draw forms, you can draw anything. Another tip for drawing teeth. So let's say this guy's smiling, like, right? You don't want to actually like draw each individual teeth out. It takes too much time. It looks sort of uncanny. Instead, you want to indicate teeth as well. Okay? Draw the gum shield shape. And in fact, from this just being open this much, you're not going to be seeing much anyway, right? So you don't need the shape. You can just draw it pre-2D, right? And then you can just indicate like a little bit of darkness, right, where the gaps would start, the canines, right, like that. And that looks way more natural. Okay? So this is wrong. This is better. There's no such thing as right or wrong in art, really. You know, if you want to draw it like the top one, go ahead. If you want your art to be creepy, go ahead. It's just that I prefer doing it like this. I think it looks much more aesthetic. Ears are pretty simple. Like the shape of the ear, they're just headphones, right? So it kind of attaches like this, and then it's just like a big ass headphone. Just think about, not headphones, sorry, like megaphones, right? Megaphones, right? The megaphone shape is the ear shape. Okay? Think of them as megaphones. Cool. Now you've thought them as megaphones. The other thing you need to know is the question mark and the why. Why the question mark and the why? I'll show you. Let's draw profile face. Okay, quick one. Now I'm gonna go where the ears would be. So remember, brow line, back, nose line back, right? Ears would start around here. And then it will be slightly slanted. So slightly slanted, diagonal. And then I'd place a question mark, right? And then a Y, right? And with that, I'll get a shape like this. Like this. Tube of the ear would come like this, right? Like you don't need to do much more than this for the ears. Okay? And then remember, if you're looking at it from the back, yeah, let's say this is the head, right? And then they're looking that way. So cheeks are covering it, nose is like this, mouth is coming out like this, right? Right? See little eyebrows. You have to remember that the ears would sit somewhere like this because it's coming back from the brow line and the nose line, right? Right? And then the headphone shape would be attached to the back of the head like this, coming out. And then you have the question mark like this. Right? You can really just indicate the ears without much detail. Because let's be honest, the ears aren't not sternocleidomastoid traps. They're not that deep. You heard? Now, how do you actually like go about practicing these? Get a bunch of reference and then use these methods to draw your reference in your anime style. So I'm just gonna draw like a super anime character, okay? So if you wanna like draw like a super like cheap like anime style, cutesy style, or even like a shonen style, you still start with the circle, but instead of having like a square jaw, you just like have something a bit more anime, right? Small ass chins, right? And then you still have the eye line, still have the center line, but nose would be a lot smaller, and you just indicate like a shape for the nose instead of an actual nose. You just shade it in a little bit, you know, and then you can have side planes shade it in as well. And then for the eyebrows, depending on your style, let's say this is like super shonen, right? We have some like thick ass eyebrows. Same thing here, thick ass eyebrows. Right, mouth would be here. Indicate, actually straight line for the mouth, like that. Big eyes, right? So socket would be big. The eye socket would be like super big this time. And then we'll have like big ass eyes. 1, 2, 3. 1, diagonal, 2. Right, we won't even connect that. Fuck it, right? And then we'll just add in some shapes for the lashes, right? Like maybe like make the top plane darker, and then a big ass eyebrow. I mean iris. Some random shape for the pupil. You know what I mean? And then we'll darken in the black line around the iris. Go, and then essentially you can basically use parallel lines across to get it, you know, so they are parallel and they're not wonky. Remember, they're all basic shapes. So the eye is a sphere, so you would see the edge of the sphere of the eyeball on the other side, and then down, up, and then you have thingies coming out, lashes coming out. In terms of expressions, you want to think about them just as emojis, right? Like let's say we're doing like a sad face. Eyebrows would probably be up. See, you've drawn this emoji. Now just like try to draw that, but on a face, right? Using what you just learned. See, it's not right, so I'm going to move the eyebrows down a little bit more. Eyes would probably be pretty big. Puppy eyes. Simple, right? You think of the emoji, you draw at the side, and then you draw the face. Angry face, same thing. Like, I don't need to go over it. You get the idea. That's how manga artists do it. How to draw hands. Hands. I'm actually really bad at drawing hands, but because I'm bad, it means you should learn from me, because it's like learning bench press from a guy who struggles to bench because hands are really, like, arms are really long, because he will have the best method, right? That's the most simplified method. Essentially with hands, right? Just trace them like this. I'm joking. What are hands? Hands are basically a shape like this, right? A trapezoid shape. And then essentially the middle finger is at the highest point, right? And essentially, like, this side where the pinky is would be lower, and this side would be slightly higher, like this, okay? And then we just, right, the pinky, like, is a little autistic because it can move, like, away from the hands quite a bit, right? And essentially from here, sorry, right, we have for the thumb a shape coming out like this, and then two things coming out like this. All right, these are the shapes you need to remember. So what are the shapes? It's a shape like this, right, in perspective. And there's a bunch of cylinders, right, or sausages, maybe, coming out from it. Like that. And then the thumb would be here, right? 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. So that's the hand, okay? So for the fingers, you need to understand we have 3 joints, right? The phalanges, right? These are the metacarpals right here, so you don't need to worry about them. But the phalanges, we have 3 phalanges here, right? This one, and this one. For the thumb, there's only 2 phalanges, and that's the metacarpal. But the metacarpal is a lot like phalange in the way that it's really free to move around, okay? But we don't even see this. So this shape right here, this one, is indicated by this right here, okay? So that shape is the metacarpal of the thumb. And then there's 2 sausages coming like this. Study your thumb, okay? If you look at Gege Akutami's hands or even Isayama's hands, like, their hands are not that good. You just need to get the idea across of the hand. And then the back of the hand is definitely the trapezius shape, right? Coming in like this. But you see these skins, the skin, right? The web of the hand. You can see that the phalange, the fingers, can be seen from the back, all right, going down below the webbing. But from the front, that can't be seen. So, and as such, the back of the hands, right, the fingers, the back of the fingers, they seem longer than the front of the fingers. But really, it's because the webbing covers it, right? And so you need to keep that in mind as well when drawing hands. When drawing the back of the hands, right, you draw the trapezius shape, right? Have the thumb coming out to like that. Middle finger is the longest. Ring fingers slightly shorter than the middle finger. Pinky is really short. And then the index finger is similar to the ring finger, right? But there would be webbing right here between the fingers, okay? So you should include that webbing. And then the knuckles would sit like this, right? For the metacarpals. And then connect. Then it would connect, okay? But the front of the hand is slightly different in the sense that we have the palm and the padding and everything. So we need to keep that in mind as well, okay? So how we would do that is we would do the same thing. This is the base of the index finger. This is where the ring finger, middle finger sits. This is the base of the index finger. The pinky finger, after the middle finger towards the pinky finger, it goes like down quite a bit. And so that's the actual shape of the hand, okay? And then we start off by drawing the middle finger, right? Like this. And then we draw the index finger like that, which is slightly shorter than the middle finger, as you can see. And then we draw the index finger, which is similar lengths to the index finger, and depending on some positions it might be longer or shorter, but I'll just draw it similarly right here. And then the pinky, because the base of the pinky is like pretty low and it's already short to begin with, sit somewhere like this, okay? And then we have two paddings, okay? We have one padding here. We have three paddings actually, but like on the palm we have two main ones, okay? One is a chicken, right? A drumstick shape like this, right? And then the thumb comes out like this. And the other one is just like a flatter, longer blob that sits right here. And then the third one is the one that sits at the base of the fingers where my calluses are, right? That's for grabbing stuff. Right here. Okay? And those three paddings actually create a little divot right here, which allows us to kind of like hold water or, you know, hold stuff there, wherever we need to hold. So we need to keep that in mind as well. In terms of the fingers, you do want to break them down, maybe draw them more boxier, right? There's three parts, right? The first one, the first phalange, that one's pretty long, okay? That one's pretty long. The last two add up to become the same height as the first phalange. So if you, right, so the first phalange is the longest one. The second two put together are the same in length as the first phalange. The third phalange is like smaller than the second phalange, okay? So that's how the fingers look, okay? Big, medium, small. Remember that. I don't like remembering the lengths, because like what's the point of doing that, right? And then like big, medium, and small. It's a good way to put it, and once you kind of have like the image in your mind, you just round it until it looks right. And essentially you can draw them as cylinders, so it doesn't have to be perfect. 2, 3, right? And when you want to move the fingers, you just rotate the cylinders in perspective. So So you can see how that could be a finger, right? You can have like a bunch of these. You know what I mean? The nail, the fingernail. For the nail, it's just a shape like this, guys. It's easy. Small at the base, small at the base, comes out, and then curves. Okay? That's all you need. And with that, you should know how to draw the hands. Now, these fists and everything, they're really hard to draw. You should reference your own hands when drawing these. Okay? There's no point of not doing it. Like, it's really hard to like get all these folds and creases and fat pads right. Doing a bunch of studies and drawing like 500 hands probably does help. I have not done it as of yet. That's why, cause like it's boring as fuck. Bro. Like, who wants to do that? But it's really good to do it, cause then you'll be able to draw hands really easily. So draw a bunch of hands, guys, using what I taught you here. Like this as a base, right? Get these ideas into your head, and with these ideas, then just like look at your hands and just draw a bunch. Draw a bunch. Break them into shapes. Don't copy the angles. Don't go like, okay, this is doing that, this is doing... No, don't do that. Break it down into shapes. So this is doing that, right? This is like that, right? Quick. I'm breaking them down into shapes. I'm not copying the lines. I'm copying the 3D form, okay? Because if you copy the shapes, you get really good at copying, right? But you won't actually be able to draw from imagination because you have nothing to copy from. But if you learn the forms, you've broken them down, and so you'll be able to recreate them. Okay, first thing you need to understand is mannequinization. Second thing is gesture. And then third thing is like drawing from imagination. But first, let's mannequinize, okay? So we did the head. The head you can just simplify into like this oval shape as well. Don't need to overcomplicate it, okay? The neck, right, as a base, comes down like this. And then we have a torso. For the torso, right, what we do is the shape of the rib cage, right? So what's the shape of the rib cage? I think the easiest way to put it is a circle, right? And then draw like a center line, and then like a opening archway, like this shape, okay? And then it opens up at the back as well, like this. So this shape is the shape you need to learn for the torso. So again, an oval shape, right? Center line, opening archway that goes around and into the back, right? And then it opens up at the back as well. Again, okay? And there's an opening right here for the shoulders. Cool? Opening right here for the neck. And let's shade this pin in as well, because that's inside. All right, this is what you need to keep in mind when you're drawing the shape of the rib cage. Now, it's a bit more oval than that, so instead of having it be a perfect circle, what I was explaining is it's actually better to draw it as like a longer oval shape like this, right? So it's not completely circular like this, but rather more oval like this. And so you can then use this shape to rotate in perspective, right? And when rotating in perspective, rotating curves is really hard. So it's even better to then simplify it into like angles, right? So let's say we're looking up at it. We'll use straight lines. Same concept, right? But we're using straight lines instead of ovals and curves. And so it's much easier for us to think of it, right? Even the head, I like using curves, but curves are really difficult compared to just straight lines. So breaking it down into straight lines is even better. So we have that for the torso, and then for the pelvis we have an underwear shape. So let's just draw like an ellipse, and then with the ellipse just draw straight lines and then bring down the underwear shape. And there's obviously holes for the legs to come out of. From here we need to understand a little bit about the femurs and how they come out. There's basically a little thing that comes out like this, and then the legs, the bones of the legs do something like that. You just need to know this so you can draw cylinders coming down like this. Now that's definitely a female, because holy hell, she thick. You know what I mean? But with the males, just bring it in a little bit. You know, don't make them as curvy. So basically, it's just, you know, you need to understand this, right? Break everything down into simple shapes, just like this. You know, no feet again, because I didn't plan it out. But feet, basically, shoe shape. Like, that's what I use. You know, sometimes I might go more fancy and, you know, actually draw feet. Whatever. I don't know how to draw feet. You know, but I'm not a weirdo, so I don't draw feet. But yeah, man, you need to understand this and basically rotate this in perspective. So, you know, and I'm being very loose right now because we're trying to figure it out. We're not gods, you know. We're not Kim Jong-il as of yet. Even Kim Jong-il used to scribble back in the days, so trying to, you know, go back in perspective. And if you look at all manga artists, they draw very scribbly like this because they're trying to figure out the correct thing, you know. They're not trying to get right on the first go. I mean, they are, but they know they won't, so they're not spending too much time trying to make every line perfect because they know it's not going to be right anyway. You know, so it's good to be loose like this. And basically, you want to be able to draw them in perspective, get them correct, you know, use construction lines, etc., and draw stuff in different perspectives. See, so this is wrong. I'm going to bring it down. Basically like that. I'm doing it very fast right now for the sake of demonstration. That would be a bit slower when I'm doing it for an actual drawing. Now I'm going to teach you how to do gesture drawings, right? So when you're doing gesture drawings, I want you to do figure drawings and base them off of reference, okay? Pull up a page of Berserk and try to find a figure, right? We just want to study like a bunch of figures from comic artists. So so you see this one of Puck right here, right? We're going to study this figure, right? But we're not going to draw the actual drawing. We're not going to copy the drawing. What we're going to do is we're going to break it down and him down into a mannequin, okay? So what I see is a head like this. Right? Neck coming out like this. See the rib cage. Going like this, right? Clavicular. Other side. See how I'm breaking it down into simple shapes instead of like copying line for line what Miura is doing here, right? Hands, break it down into simple shapes. He is arching that back, so bring it in, underwear shape, right? From here the legs are coming out over like this, knees just a little box. And I do recommend using a pencil. I'm using a marker here because I don't want to spend too much time on these drawings, right? Whatever, right? You get the idea. So the best way to study figure drawing for manga is by studying manga and comics. So you see the way I demonstrated this, I recommend you do a bunch of this, a whole lot of this. Because if you actually copy manga pages and comic book pages instead of doing like figure drawing from models, because human models can only move in certain ways. Manga characters are moving a lot of different ways from different perspectives, and so studying the masters is really good. And so just do like a bunch of these sort of gesture drawings, okay? Where you're like breaking down manga panels and manga poses in perspective, and you'll be able to draw like your favorite manga artist. Just draw like whoever you think has the best figures, just copy them, and you'll be able to draw just like them. Also, I do want you to use a lot of C, S, and I lines when you're drawing. An artist called Emily Sue or Emily Meow on Instagram, she has really good figure drawings, and she uses a lot of CSI curves in her drawings, and she doesn't even like break them down like this, because the way animators do figure drawings is slightly different from the way comic book artists do figure drawings. They're more linear about it, they're more like gestural about it. So you might want to study, like breaking your figure down into like stick figures, and just using curves. Like, so straights, CS and I is just like a C curve, S curve, and a straight. Okay, so essentially C curve, right, straight, and then C curve again, right, and then straight into a C curve, right, and then I can do like this. Okay, another tip I have is whenever you're trying to like draw figures or study figures, you need to keep in mind the angle of the claviculars and the angle of the pelvis, because usually they're in opposition to each other, and these create really interesting poses. Okay, so, and yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Once you do a bunch of studies of artists like this one I just demonstrated here, you'll be able to draw your own figures and characters from whatever poses. You just need to draw a bunch of these, okay? And you'll be ready to make your own manga. Alright guys, thank you for watching the video. That was a long one. I'll see you next week.